Welcome into another edition of Locked On Nationals. And on today's show, I have a very special guest, Danny Nokes from 1067 The Fan, someone who knows the ins and outs of the Washington Nationals. So we're going to get into all of that and more right after this.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Clary, and I have taken my Nationals passion into podcast form here with the Locked On Podcast Network. And in doing that said podcast, I get to bring on some fun guests, just like my guy, Danny Nokes from 1067 The Fan. Danny, what's going on, man? How you doing? How's the offseason been for the Nationals?
I'm doing great, brother. Hey, I appreciate you having me on Locked On Nationals. I really appreciate it. You do a fantastic job. Got to say, it's been a relatively uneventful offseason for the Washington Nationals. Now, with the last couple of weeks, we've seen them make a couple of more moves that'll help them kind of shape out what that starting nine will look like here come the end of March, right? But I don't think it's really got any of the fans particularly excited with the the quality of players that they're bringing in. But obviously with the spot that this franchise is in right now, nothing that they're really doing has been particularly surprising. So let's get into it, man.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you kind of just hit it off there. You know, the situation that we're in right now, being in a rebuild after winning the World Series in 2019. I mean, people think about it and it's like, I wouldn't have guessed that we would have been in this position even the last 2 years or even the last 3 years if you count 2020 as well. Yeah. And so it's kind of shocking and jarring to some people that we sit here today and you sign left fielder Corey Dickerson for a 1-year, $2 million deal. And it's like, you know, that's a good deal for a team that was the worst team in baseball last year. But like, this isn't a move that's going to be for a playoff hunt, you know? Right. So how do you kind of think about the Corey Dickerson signing today? He'll be filling out left field.
Yeah, that's right. And I think if they run into some trouble in right field, you know, he could play either corner. So that's positive. But I actually had the chance to listen to your last episode too, buddy. And I thought that the way that you positioned the Corey Dickerson deal was pretty much exactly what fans should expect with this. And it's great because he's a former Gold Glove winner. He's a former All-Star. So there is potential there, but there's a reason that he was available this offseason. And that reason is because his production has dipped over the last couple of years. Now, if he comes to DC and has a revitalization of his career, which we've seen with a couple of guys, then maybe he becomes someone that come the trade deadline this July, you can make a deal and bring some more young guys on that you can develop. But yeah, it's kind of tough because this is a team that went from winning the World Series in 2019, like you said, to essentially selling off every legitimate piece, every productive piece that helped them win that championship just a couple of years ago. And it's a shame because there was a championship parade, but there was no ring ceremony. There was no banner ceremony because of the COVID thing. So it almost feels like it didn't even happen, especially with how quickly that the Nationals have come back to the basement of the National League East. And, you know, the other thing, and not to get into a conversation about the other teams in the NL East, but with what the Phillies have done, with what the Braves have done, with what the Mets have done, I think it just makes it that much more frustrating to see where it does, you know, and a lot of former Nationals players are involved with those teams right now. And we're regularly watching them compete against the team that they helped bring a world championship to. So I think all of that really plays into the way that we're all feeling, because I mean, you know, we don't expect this team to win a whole lot of games this year. You know, we're talking probably somewhere between 55 and 65 games, just kind of depending on how well some of these guys are able to step up.
Yeah. And, you know, and that's a great point too, because it's like, I've been trying to tell people, I'm like, listen, like I saw where someone said that this could be an 80 team win or 80 or an 80 win team. And I was like, it'd be nice if we were in AAA.
Yeah,
this is not a team like Mike Rizzo, Davey Martinez, all those guys who are out there. They're going to say, we could win with this team. Well,
right.
every team, all 30 GMs go into the season being like, we could win with this team. The Marlins have said it for 10 years. We could win with this team. They haven't won with that team. The Angels go in every year. We can win with this team. They don't win with that team. And they have studs.
Right.
And it's like, and that's what people point to a lot. But really, the whole conversation of this right now, to me, it really revolves around ownership.
Sure.
I think if we had new ownership in this situation right now, I think they would actually want to be aggressive. I think they would actually want to sign some of these splashy guys, I don't think it would be like a Carlos Correa or Aaron Judge or anything like that, but some of these middle tier guys like a Josh Bell, giving him a 2-year, $38 million deal, something like that. And so that also comes into play when we're in this total lingo right now to where we don't really know where we stand with the ownership, and kind of how do you think this ownership situation right now that we're in has affected the offseason and really has affected the Washington Nationals as a whole?
I mean, there's just no doubt that what's going on with the ownership in flux with the Nationals, that's having a tremendous effect on what their strategy has been, both this offseason, with the trade deadline last year, and with really everything that they're doing. I imagine that they've got a limited budget, and I think it all stems from the fact that Lerner Enterprises during the pandemic really took a hit as a real estate company. And a lot of people could say the same thing, right? We all took hits of different financial proportions during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think obviously that's where it starts. But, if we really look at the history of the Lerners owning this franchise, it never really seemed like baseball was their number one priority, because they're really only willing to spend money on starting pitching, not even relievers, right? Just starting pitching. And that's a great way to spend your money. But you've had a lot of, really good talent come through this building over the last 10 years, and no one is still here except for Steven Strasburg. And when was the last time that we even saw him pitch effectively in a regular season game? Because they haven't even been anywhere close to the postseason since then. So here's how I'm approaching the 2023 season, right? It's just like the way that you should have gone into this past weekend of the Commanders against the Cowboys, right? Set those expectations low, because that way you won't be as disappointed, right? So I think what fans should look forward to here in this season is not the win-loss record. And sure, you want to see them win as much as they possibly can, but let's see what Mackenzie Gore looks like when he gets back, right? When he's finally healthy. How does he acclimate himself? Because you would assume that he's going to be a part of the starting rotation once he gets there. He was pretty effective in his first 5 games for the Padres last year. I was actually reading his Q&A that he did with Mark Zuckerman from Masson, which was great as always. And one of the things that he pointed to was that he has to get better at is, as the season goes along, he needs to sort of change things up a little bit, and pun intended, because he is a pitcher, right? There's a change up and whatnot. But he needs to start to vary certain things so that hitters can't necessarily pick up on all of his tendencies and figure out where he's going with his next pitch, or which pitch he might throw next. I thought that was a very mature thing, by the way, of Mackenzie Gore to recognize, considering he doesn't obviously have a whole lot of Major League Baseball experience. So I'm looking forward to getting guys like that into the lineup, get our first look of them in a Nationals uniform. Let's get Cade Cavalli back, right? Always said that first start, Cade Cavalli's debut last year, it went south quickly because of how bad their defense was. And it was an early Abrams error that allowed those couple of runs to come across in the first inning, and really just had him trying to come from behind from the get-go. And for any young pitcher, I don't care if it's Steven Strasburg or if it's Cade Cavalli or whoever you're putting out there, it's going to be hard to play from behind, especially with the lineup that the Nationals are trotting out there every single day, So, and to his credit, Abrams really improved defensively after that. He had a great close to his season. So I want to see guys like Abrams to continue their development. How much better can they be, right? And Luis Garcia, all the top guys that everyone's focused on. It's not like I'm pointing to, anything special or anything that's going to come out of left field. It's, they made a big deal last year sending Soto to San Diego. Now need to start to see some of those assets that came in. We need to start reaping some of the benefits of that, or at least get them to a point where they're, developing efficiently and regularly contributing to the team.
100%. And you kind of just started going down that hole where I want to get down to with you, especially with, when you talk about the Soto trade, people have their side. I'm team that we should have traded him because I've seen too many superstars leave here empty-handed for Nationals fans. We don't get anything in return. And I couldn't stand to bear that when it comes to Juan Soto because I think he is the best player that this organization has ever produced.
Right.
Well, over the last decade, doesn't matter when. I think he is the best Washington National to step into that clubhouse. But then furthermore, I do want to talk about some of the players that we got in return from that deal, or actually players, singular, because I want to talk about the starting pitching staff with you. But before we get into that, I need to tell you guys about my friends at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and, of course, college basketball. My guys at BetOnline, they've got you covered. And guys, this is what I do. It's real simple. Why did I say simpy? It's real simple. This is what you do. You just look on betonline.net. You get all the numbers, all the analytics that you will need to figure out what bet is the best way to bet. Because my guy, Danny, we both like to bet. What do? We go to BetOnline. They give you all the info that you'll need. It's that easy. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. And now we get back into Locked On Nationals with Danny Nokes from 106.7 The Fan. And Danny, you kind of started to go down to where I wanted to transition to with the starting pitching, because I look at this starting pitching staff and honestly, I don't think it's that bad. I don't think it's that bad because, as you were saying, I believe in Mackenzie Gore.
Yeah.
I think Mackenzie Gore is a sure thing, good, solid starting pitcher. Now, will we see that right away? Probably not. But then again, you look at Josiah Gray. I expect for him to take a year 3 step up. The time is now for Josiah. You look at Cade Cavalli. I think he's going to have a solid rookie season here in the major leagues. I think there are pieces that to where if they can turn out, this pitching staff may not be as bad as they are kind of seem to be by a lot of people. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it, Ryan. And that's the optimist in us both, right? We want to see this team win, and these are guys.
Fans.
Yeah, we are, and I'm very open about that on my show too. All you can see behind me, this is called the Dan Cave. Right. This is where every single team that I love, and they're all from Washington, D.C., is represented here in this Dan Cave right now, and Virginia Tech too, which I'm going to give a shout out to a little bit later on in the show, because there's a prospect in the Nationals organization that I think deserves to at least have some eyes on. I don't think that he's going to be a contributor. I'll tell you about it.
It's a tease.
It is a tease, and I don't think he's coming up this year, but he really had a strong finish to last year. So I definitely want to bring him up. We'll get to him. But yeah, when it comes to Gore, when it comes to Cavalli, Josiah Gray, Josiah Gray has been really the lone bright spot of the pitching staff for the last couple of years. And he has had some rough outings. Don't get me wrong. I'm not coming out here and saying, that he even looked as good as Strasburg as early on in his career as Strasburg did. But I see the potential there. And I saw it with Cavalli. And I just looking at the numbers, I didn't exactly spend a whole lot of time watching Padres baseball last year. Although I did get to go to a Padres game in person because my friend got married out there.
I remember that.
That was really fun. But I believe in Mackenzie Gore. Those numbers before he had that lapse toward his last 5 starts and before he ultimately got injured, he was pretty darn good. He was pretty effective, and that was at the major league level. Yeah. So imagine if you could count on Patrick Corbin to come back, and maybe he's not exactly right. He doesn't have to be what he was in the postseason for the Nationals when they won the World Series in 2019. He doesn't have to be lights out. He just needs to be better than terrible, which is what he's been recently. And that's no offense. It's just a fact. He has not been good, and the amount of money he's making will make your head spin when you compare it to the actual production that he's given you. And the same goes for Strasburg. Strasburg hasn't even been out there, but I was one of the people that after the Nats won that World Series in 2019, I was all for giving Steven Strasburg that contract, and hindsight's 2020 and whatnot, but I'll wear that. That was a bad decision, and a lot of scouts, I know the junkies call this out when we get into baseball season pretty much every year. EB loves to talk about it, but a lot of scouts across baseball have been warning the Nationals about Strasburg for a long time and his mechanics and how they're going to cause some injuries later on in his career. Lo and behold, here we are. So there's more potential with this starting rotation than might meet the eye, but some certain things have to happen, right? Health is one thing, and with so many guys in this rotation that
so many
are wishy-washy when it comes to staying healthy, and that's not their fault. It's just hard to really peg any sort of expectation for what they could be. So, I kind of put Corbin and Strasburg aside because you just really don't know what you're going to get out of them. And you could say the same for the three young guys that we've talked about as well. But when it comes to Cavalli, Gray, and Mackenzie Gore, they're young and they need to continue their development. They need to step up. And, I think we've started to see it with Gray and Cavalli because they've been here with the Nats. We haven't seen it yet with Gore because he hasn't played. But I think he's taken it upon himself this offseason to get to that point.
And I totally agree with that, by the way, because I think Mackenzie Gore, in fact, I've said this multiple times now on this platform, I think Mackenzie Gore, when it's all said and done, the 2023 season, you ask, who was the Nationals' best starting pitcher? I think it's going to be Mackenzie Gore. Yeah. And that's not a slight to Josiah Gray. I think Josiah Gray is going to be taking a big step up. But then I've also said that I don't think he's going to be your number 1 or number 2 starter. I think he's going to be a very good 3 starter, and that's perfectly fine. That's what we need from him, because you have guys like Cavalli who have the potential to be a number 1 guy. You have Mackenzie Gore, who also has a potential to be the number 1 guy. And then also whoever the Nationals draft, whoever they sign, whatever they do, there's room to fill out there. Yeah. I just need Josiah Gray to be a solid, reliable 3rd guy. But even then with Mackenzie Gore, you talk about Steven Strasburg, Patrick Corbin. Steven Strasburg is on his own island. Yeah. We don't know what's going to be happening there. We don't know how his injury could take place because you know this. You're in the media. You watch this team. Steven Strasburg does not talk with the media.
Not at all.
And so when he talked with Jesse Doherty from the Washington Post back in September, I believe, when he dropped that story on the future of him, he was very transparent in saying, I don't know where my future lies. Yeah. And coming from a professional athlete who doesn't talk to the media, as we were saying, that's a kind of a cry for help almost, to where it's will this guy ever pitch? And I'm not going to ask you will Steven Strasburg ever pitch again? But just kind of what is your thought on that, to where we gave him all this money, he's got all the years left, and will he pitch again?
Here's the optimist in me, buddy. I'll take this angle again, because that's what we're all about here, right? We're taking the high road. Optimism, okay? What it reminds me of, and I won't go off too much on this tangent because this is a Nationals podcast, but what the Capitals just went through with Nick Backstrom, right? And they had both Backstrom and Wilson, part of their Stanley Cup lineup, big parts of the team, big parts of their offense, out for a long time. They just got him back this past weekend. Well, for Backstrom specifically, and they're both trying to overcome some pretty significant injuries. Wilson's was a torn ACL, but Backstrom was trying to get over this hip issue that was affecting the way that he played, of course, but it was really affecting his everyday life. And his decision to have surgery was based on him wanting to, have a better chance to spend time with his family, chase his kids around, that sort of thing. So the decision to have the surgery wasn't based on hockey. He said, I'm going to make this decision for Nick Backstrom, the dad, not the hockey player. And the hockey thing, we'll figure that out, right? So what happens normally for professional athletes when they have this surgery too is not very good results, right? They don't really come back. They're not very effective, that sort of thing. But Backstrom took it slow. And all the reports, we've only seen 1 game out of him so far, but he's recovered from it really nicely. And only time will tell as to how close to the old Nick Backstrom he gets to. But the surgery seems to have worked, and he's going to continue to reacclimate himself to the lineup. So that's what I'm hoping for with Strasburg. The problem with Strasburg is that the injuries have just been I mean, it hasn't been one, right? He's already had Tommy John surgery, but he's had other elbow issues. He's had shoulder issues. He's had other weird issues, other injuries too. And it's not a shot at the guy, but he can't stay healthy. So hopefully he has a similar, sort of not like a reckoning or like a come to Jesus moment or anything like that, because I think he's probably got it figured out. But just that he's able to get to a point where he can even compete again, because we're not even seeing him right now, and without, like you said, without a whole lot of background on what he's going through, because he doesn't want to speak to the media, which is understandable to a certain point. We just are allowed to run rampant with speculation, and that's where we're at.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what it came down to, because no one really knew about what his injuries really compiled. Like, everyone was kind of just speculating about what it is, because one, the Nationals, this has been one of my least favorite things of all time when it comes to the Washington Nationals, is that they do not speculate at all when it comes to injuries. They will not let you know a single thing. That's just the way they operate. Kudos to them. It seems to do well. They've won a World Series doing that. So do what you got to do. But also, it makes me so upset, because then it allows us to speculate about what it is. And especially when it comes to Steven Strasburg, when you give him all that money, the millions and the millions and the millions that you give him, it feels like a bad business decision almost. But before we wrap up today's show, thanks for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every day. Locked On MLB Prospects, hosted by Lindsey Crosby, who is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow, and it is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And now to get back into the final stretch of this show, Danny, we were talking about Steven Strasburg, and honestly, I wasn't even planning to get into Steven Strasburg, but anytime we can talk about the guy, talk about the former World Series MVP, I'm here for it. I want to talk about Strasburg because it's truly kind of the greatest wonder of the world, whether he's going to be pitching or not. But also, to kind of finish off this starting pitching conversation before we crowbar into our last final little question I have for you, is I feel like in my mind, I've convinced myself to where if Patrick Corbin can just hover around a 4.5 ERA, let's say he does that, a 4.5 ERA, you have Josiah Gray comes out, he improves. He's striking out a lot of batters. He's keeping the ball in the yard. Mackenzie Gore is who we thought he would be. Right. Cade Cavalli, who we thought we would be. That's when I kind of make myself think, Patrick Corbin, 4-starter, Trevor Williams even, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
It's not that bad. Patrick Corbin's just got to have a 4.5 ERA.
Yeah. And something else too, to just throw another wrench into this conversation, is that if Corbin is able to, resurrect his 2019 self and start pitching well again, he could also be a trade asset.
Yeah.
It'll be tough to deal him because his contract is so enormous, right? And everybody just watched his last, 3 seasons post World Series win of him just completely struggling out there. But if he returns to form, he could be another guy that you could flip for some prospects come July. And I know that doesn't sound particularly exciting for a fan. The Nats fans are sick of that, Ryan, right? Because they've seen Turner and Scherzer flipped for prospects. They've seen Soto flip for prospects. They don't want to see anybody get flipped for prospects anymore. But I think because they have the young assets that they do in their starting rotation this year, and you would expect them to continue to be for several years, I think that you'll take that, but
definitely.
But if he's able to get back to his 2019 form and he sticks around and they don't trade him, then he's just another great asset. I mean, we've seen the peak of Patrick Corbin. We've seen what he can do. It's amazing. He's got it in him. It's not like he can't do it. He's not old enough to say, oh man, he's past his prime. Count him out. He's gonna take a dip. He's not old enough to start having that conversation yet. So when it comes down to it, you got to come out, you got to perform. And if if the other guys around him, I feel like if Mackenzie Gore and Josiah Gray and Kay Cavalli come out and they set the world on fire and are just, crushing it, that you would think that would elevate someone like Patrick Corbin as they try to, they're teammates and they love one another, but try to compete with one another too.
I totally agree with that, Danny. Danny Nokes, 106.7 The Fan. It's been a ton of fun today. Tell everyone where they can find you on socials. Obviously, you're with 106.7 The Fan. You're on overtime as well as the weekends a lot. So tell everyone where they can find you.
Yeah, buddy. And thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun, and I hope we can do it again soon. So my social media handles on Twitter, I'm at Danny Nokes. I'm also frequently on Instagram. That's also a public account. You can follow me at, that's at Danny.Nokes. So a little bit of a switch up there. My next show on 106.7 The Fan is a week from Thursday, which I believe is the 19th. I'll be on the air from 6:30 to 7:45. And then the following day, Friday, January 20th, I'll be back on overtime for 106.7 from 6:30 to 10. So it's getting to the point, man, where we're going to start talking baseball again regularly. We're not done with football season yet, but the Commanders are done. So, we're almost done with football season.
I have moved on. They can't hurt me anymore. Now only the Nationals can hurt me. That's what I say. So thank you guys for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every day. And next episode, we're going to be talking, of course, about the Washington Nationals. So now you can make your second listen Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby, who is a prospect encyclopedia, and he always discusses the MLB stars of tomorrow. So guys, check it out. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Danny, I end out every show with what's for dinner tonight.
What's for dinner tonight? Okay. You'll have to give me some grace because I don't know exactly what it's called, but it's going to be a delicious shrimp pasta dish that my girlfriend Valerie is getting ready to prepare downstairs. So very grateful for her and for her making dinner tonight because I can't wait. It's going to be delicious. I'll send you a picture too when we're done, buddy. If you want, it's going to be beautiful. But before we get out of here, I told you that I had guy that I wanted to keep, that I wanted everybody to keep an eye on. And he's currently from MLB.com. He's the 25th ranked prospect in the Nationals organization, but a right-handed pitcher who you could probably expect to see in AAA this year. His name is Zach Brixey. All right. Zach Brixey. Brixey played a lot down in Fredericksburg last year. He played some in Harrisburg as well. But I expect him to come up now to AAA, to Rochester this year. I don't think that you'll see him on the Nationals major league roster, but he's someone that really closed out last season well. I am a Hokie. He's a Hokie. So, yeah, there's a little bit of bias right there. But I love the way that he finished the season last year. And, you can never have too many arms in the bullpen. So he's a guy that he continues that development right there. We will see him in a Nationals uniform soon.
No. And actually, it's funny you brought him up, but I know I've said that this is the last thing, but like he is legit someone that I think will be a very good relief pitcher. Look at the numbers and his strikeouts in the innings. This guy is legit.
Yeah.
Like, super legit. I didn't even know that he went to Virginia Tech. I thought he was actually, because he was part of that 2020 draft, if I remember correctly. And that 2020 draft was only 5 rounds because of the pandemic and all that. So he definitely would have been drafted. He was just kind of one of those guys who would have gone in the 6th, 7th, or 8th round who kind of just got screwed.
Yeah.
And that's why he went undrafted. And the Nationals got a steal.
They did. And he continues to fly under the radar, which is exactly what we need. I got to watch him when I went on back-to-back road trips in 2018 and 2019 with the Virginia Tech baseball team. I went and I called their first 10 to 13 games of the season. We went to a couple of different tournaments. So I got to watch Zach pitch in person and do some play-by-play for a couple of different of his games. So to see what he did at the end of last season in the minors in the National League, in the Nationals farm system, I'm excited.
Yeah, so you just said he's going to be the next Craig Kimbrell, right?
I didn't say that.
You guaranteed it, right?
I'm all about optimism, but I also don't want anybody's expectations to just go, to the moon, because I don't expect that to be where this team is this year. But there are some bright spots. Just keep an eye on those prospects. A lot of them are on the track that you would want them to be. It's going to take some time, but they've got some guys. So, fingers crossed, man.
All right. Well, Danny, this has been fun, man. And we'll wrap it up here. All right. You have a good one, Danny.
You too, buddy. Talk to you
All right,
soon.
Nats fans, we will talk to you another day. Have a good one. Thanks for tuning in.